Hello, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, and this is another video tutorial for the New Boston. Now, in this tutorial we're going to be talking, or rather in this short tutorial series, we've got the get variable, the post variable, and we're also talking about request, which will be something later on when we've understood about forms in general. This first tutorial is going to talk about HTML forms. We're going to go sort of back to basics and how we use them and different elements of them that allow us to process data through PHP or send data to a page rather. Now, I'm going to be using this example for the same page, but when you do post data, you can either post it to the same page that you're on currently, or you can post it to another page. Now, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, that's absolutely fine. I will begin to create my HTML form and I'll explain each element of the form as we go along. We're not actually going to be doing any PHP programming necessarily in this video. Okay, so the first thing we do when we specify a form is the start and the end tag of the form. We also specify an action and a method. Now, the action is where this form is going to submit when a submit button is clicked. So we include a submit button on our form. This will be inside here a bit later on. Now, the first thing we do, like I said, is we declare the the action. Sorry, yeah, we'll do the action first. So in this case, I want the action to link back to this same page, and this page is called index.php. You can see this shown here and up here as well. So we've got form action equals index.php. When a submit button is clicked, the form will then submit any data that is inside of it to this same page, and then we can start to process this data inside our PHP tags. The method can either be get or post, depending on how you're submitting the variables. Now, a little about either of them. Get is basically sending the data, it's visible in the URL, and it's sending the variables through the format of a URL. Post sends data through the HTTP post method, so they're slightly different. I'm not going to talk about them quite yet, but I'm going to use get just to show you an example in this tutorial. So what do we want to do first? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enter some input fields. So I'm going to say day, and I'm going to create an input type or an input tag. So on its own it would look like this, and the type is going to be text. The name of it is essentially what you're naming it in regard to a variable. This will be submitted and we can pick it up using the collection of get variables, which is almost like an associative array. So the name of this I'm going to call is day. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down, and I'm going to say date, input type equals text, name equals date, so we're calling it something different. We're breaking down again and we're saying year. So input type equals text, name equals year. We break down a couple more times just to keep everything neat, and I'm going to create a button. And in fact, let's just see how this looks at the moment. Let's refresh. Okay, so we've got day, date and year. In actual fact, just to make things a bit tidier, I'm going to break in between each one of these as well. So that is looking like that. So we've essentially created our form already. We just need a button, like I said earlier, down here, and that's input type of submit, and the value of that is what is displayed. So if I get rid of this here and I refresh, you can see it just says submit. Some browsers it will default to submit request, but I can specify anything here. You can see that will just create it to look like any. Well, it'll create with the capitalized text anything. So I'm just going to call this submit. Okay, so now what's going to happen is, if you watch, by default my browser doesn't show the index.php page in its URL. However, if I was to click on submit, like I said earlier, we've just supplied the action of this form to go to index.php. So when I click on it, you'll notice the URL up here changes, and we've also included a few variables. We've got day, date, and the year. So the way this works is, after the page name itself, which is here in blue, we have a question mark, and after this we specify our variables. So the name of the variable is day, and that is equal to something. At the moment it's nothing. And then we say and with an ampersand symbol. We say date is equal to something here. At the moment it's equal to nothing. And then again the year is equal to something here, which at the moment is equal to nothing. So if, for example, I type Monday, I type 31st, and I type 2011, and I click submit, if you look up the top of the page you can see that the URL has changed, and in actual fact the day is equal to Monday, date is equal to 31st, and the year is equal to 2011. So now we have submitted what's called get variables through PHP using a form. So that's how to create a form and submit them. However, we want to actually do something with them. Now in the next tutorial we're going to be looking at get variables and how we should use them and why we should use them, and then in the other tutorial we're going to look at post variables, and again the same, how we use them, why we use them. So this has been basically how to create the form and submitting the variables, and so we can use them eventually in PHP.